Good morning. I'm Shelley Johnson. I am Director of Adult Discipleship here at New Covenant. We're really excited and very humbled to be up here with you this morning. We hope God has a word for you today.
And I am Amber Hocker, and I am the Director of Connection Ministry, and I am married to sweet husband John, and we have 6 kids, and their photos should pop up. They go from age 7 to 8 months old, so we kind of have a house full. They're ornery and beautiful, and I love them. So that's who I am. And today, I want you to know we are not preachers, but we do feel like God has given us a word to share, so we're really excited to be here. So it's Mother's Day. This day brings a lot of emotions, and some of them are happy. We love to celebrate our moms. If you're a mom, then you get to be celebrated. So right now I have all my littles, and they love to make all the homemade gifts. We're in that stage of life. And so last year, Elijah did this little My Mommy sheet for me that I wanted to share with you to see some humor in my 2-year-old. So it should be on the screen, but I'm going to skip down kind of to the middle and read you a couple of things. So he says, he filled in the blanks here. When I am at school, my mom is gone at my house. Exactly right, you're just sitting at home. The best thing she cooks is Pop-Tarts. That's probably true. My favorite thing to do with my mom is have waffles and pancakes. If I could buy her a gift, I would buy her pancakes. He likes his food. And I love my mom more than pizza.
You are loved.
He likes his food, so he must really love me, right? So sweet times of Mother's Day. And then we also acknowledge that Mother's Day can be really, really hard. And we do not want to not acknowledge that. I know that there are ladies waiting to conceive and what that feels like. I know that there are those of you that have faced great loss and you're still just in your grief. There are those of you that have a 3-year-old kicking you in the head all night because they won't sleep in their own bed. There are those of you that are constantly in that comparison game with our social media these days and always looking to those things. There are those of you that are worn out with school and extracurricular activities and sports. There are those of you that are fighting your battle with teens every day. Those of you that are trying to navigate those young adults because your control is gone. And those of you that are even watching your 40-year-old children battle cancer. The list goes on and on. I could touch on to everything. I feel like one thing that really defines our culture is that we are tired. We're parent, non-parent, male, female, we're just tired. So when AC asked us to do this, and we were trying to think of what to share, we went to that Matthew 11 passage. It just resonated so much with us. And so I'm going to read it to you again, this time in the Message version. It's a little different. And I just want you to remember this is Jesus talking. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly.
Yes. When Amber and I first looked at this passage, we recognized right off the bat that there are 3 questions that pretty much address all the different ways we can be tired. Are you tired? That is a physical exhaustion that we can feel on lots of different levels. Worn out is that emotional weariness that we can feel. And then are you burned out on religion? That has to do with our spiritual exhaustion. So we want to try to break this down for us as we move through this morning. First, physical. Are you tired? Moms, that's a silly question, right? We're mostly sleep deprived. We have the pressure of high demands to deal with on a daily basis, and that is 24/7. We deal with things like illness, disease, injuries, overly full schedules. We stress over all of our kids' stuff. And if you throw life change in there to boot, it really elevates that exhaustion that we can feel. Amber with 6 kids, a full-time job. I don't know how you do it. I know you're tired.
Well, it's hard, but like I always like to tell people, I don't care if you have 1-6. I don't care if you have 1 kid or you have 11 kids or you have 6 in the middle. If you're a parent, it's tiring. So that, just know that, and I understand that very full well. And it is hard. John and I just try to be really organized. We try. We also drive a small bus, so that's how we have to do things differently. Um, Another thing is that John and I are just really a team. We work together. We have a really great support system. This church, our friends, and our family, they just really surround us when we're tired. A couple of months ago, I looked at John and was like, okay, I'm really tired. I need a full night's sleep. Like, I hadn't had that since Oliver, our baby, and by the end of the week, he'd arranged for all the kids to be gone with grandparents, and we got to go out, stay in a hotel, and just uninterrupted sleep, a full night. It was glorious. But that's how those grandparents stepped in. So if you're a grandparent, that's such an important role that you play, and just take advantage of that. As young adults with young kids, we need that. And so God has just been really faithful to provide us with a really, really strong support system to help us when we're tired.
So what does it look like for you on a day-to-day basis? I mean, there's that daily fatigue you deal with.
So every now and then I get a nap. Can I get an amen? Who loves a nap? Anybody? Like maybe today I'll get one, maybe. And just little things like time with a friend. We have great friends that just come with their kids too, and so we can just kind of let the kids go play, and just even getting to be with our friends. A moment alone in the car is like golden if you're a mom. And so I don't have to listen to their music or their movie on, and I can listen to worship music, or I spend that time in prayer sometimes because I'm like alone and it's quiet. John and I are really good about stepping in when the other's done. I get done a lot, and I am just a better mom because John knows when to come in when I'm kind of at the end of myself. But I think of single moms who are amazing, because I couldn't do this alone. I always tell everybody that. And so, Shelley, do you know any single moms that have had to deal with this tiredness?
Yes, and I can't imagine their level of exhaustion because they're doing it on their own. And I have been blessed. I've had several single moms in my sphere, including my aunt. But I'll tell you, one in particular is my next door neighbor, Peggy. I watched, my husband and I both, just kind of came alongside her during a season, a lot of years ago now, but when her husband was diagnosed with cancer, and then within a year we lost him. And at the time, their kids were ages 2, 4, and 6. It was an awful time. There wasn't anything fun, good about it, but I watched Peggy rise up in that season. She was an inspiration to me, and as I've watched her over the years, she has continued to be. And one thing she has done really well is she has been able to ask for help. She's humbled herself, kind of laid down that pride, and been able to just look to people around her and say, I can't do this on my own. And that has reminded me that I need to do the same thing. When I can't carry the load by myself, I need to ask for help. So I hope we'll learn from her that way. Another thing she has done really well is leaned on her faith. From the beginning, she just really leaned on God to carry her through the illness and then the death and in the raising of her kids. And there was at one point not long after her husband passed away that she said, Shelley, I knew going into this that God would provide for us physically, that he would meet every need and just be our provider. She said, but what I didn't realize was how he would provide for us emotionally as well. And that really stuck out to me. In fact, it stuck with me all of these years. I hadn't thought about the ways God can provide for us emotionally. And that's the second point in our scripture today, is that he really can. When we are worn out, that has everything to do with how we get drained emotionally. Moms, think about, we're dealing with various personalities in our home. There's always drama. It doesn't matter whether it's guys, girls, or the ages. People and situations in our lives can tap us as well, whether it's the teacher, the neighbor, the in-laws, the rebellious child. The list, again, could go on, but they all take a toll on us emotionally. Amber, I heard you say a little while ago you get to that place where you're done. What does that look like, or what do you do?
I get done a lot, let me just tell you. I'm just going to be honest. And when I do, one thing I've learned is I just put myself in timeout. And so that means that I'm like, John, I'm done. And I go to my room and I close the door, and I just have to have a minute. In that place, I'm usually praying or just trying to gather my emotions. Plenty of times I just cry because I'm emotional too. So sometimes I just need to go shed my tears for a minute. There's a family favorite in our house. If you have young kids, you know Daniel Tiger. And he sings all these great songs. So I'm going to sing this one that he sings you get a special show today, and it goes, when you're feeling frustrated, take a step back and ask for help. Awesome. And so my kids know that. Like, I tell them when I'm frustrated, I'll say, Mommy's frustrated, and I just need to take a step back. And that's kind of when I go, surely, if you're a parent, you've like felt that kind of frustration, right? I see head nods, thank you. And we apologized. A couple weeks ago, it was bedtime, and my 6-year-old Ian is a Lego fanatic, and he had been playing Legos, but I had warned him a couple of times, like, it's time to clean up, it's time to get ready for bed. Nope, go up there, not ready. So I got upset, and I met him. I'm going to be really honest with you, emotionally. I got down to his 6-year-old level and kind of lost it and met him where he was, which is not good. And so John managed to get upstairs, and I was like, I'm done. And I went to my room and went to my little timeout spot. And in there, I just gathered myself and was like, I've got to go apologize to him. I need to get in there before he goes to sleep because John had put the kids in bed. So I went in, and I went into his room and got down in his bed by him. I mean, before I could even say anything, he looked at me and said, Mama, I'm really sorry, which makes me emotional just thinking about it. And I said, buddy, me too. Like, I'm really sorry. And so we just have to do that. Like, we have to apologize, and we do that in my house. I never knew how angry I could get until I had kids. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm serious. And at the beginning, I just think I had this preconceived idea that it was going to be easy, and I totally was giving the side eye to the mom in the store whose kid was losing it. And now I'm the mom in the store whose kid might be losing it, and I just have to be okay with that because we are just emotional people, and our kids are emotional. And Shelley, I deal with all these little ones. I call my 3-year-old my 3-nager because he just thinks that he's like way bigger than he is. And their emotions, but you've gone through, your boys are older, so you've gone through the real like teen years and emotions. So how have you dealt with those teen years?
I pray a lot, and I do better emotionally in some seasons and on some days than others. I, too, am a very emotion-based person, but what I've been learning is that it's okay to feel. It's just getting to that place where I don't let my emotions control my responses, and I've had great people in my life who have helped me see that and model that for me. My parents, I've had spiritual moms, speak wisdom in just the right moment and season of when I've needed that. And so I've picked up some practices over the years. One of them is journaling. I just love making that time, and I have to be really intentional to carve it out, but just getting all of that emotion out, getting it in writing. It is very cathartic for me. And so is sitting down with a trusted friend or my husband, and we can just talk through it. The burden really gets released at that point. I cry. When it's just time, I get alone and I cry. But what I try not to do, and this again is something I'll probably have to work on all my life, is when I get so focused on that situation or how I feel, I'm looking inward. I'm looking at self. And Scripture tells us to look to God. And so praise, turning on that praise music is huge because it truly helps me shift my thoughts and my focus back to God. And not to make you think, or anybody to think that teen years are all bad, because they aren't. They're also full of amazing moments. Some of my favorite times as a parent have been in those conversations where all of a sudden just kind of the light bulb goes on and I see, oh my gosh, they're going into their own person and they're making their own decisions, and I'm getting to see some of the fruit of all those years of labor. It's encouraging, and it gives you hope in the season that you need it. And we just want to keep in mind that that's the whole goal, right? Is to build these independent people who can be on their own and who can be a healthy, vital part of society. So we just got to know parenting is messy. It has its ups and downs, and there isn't a one-size-fits-all. Every kid is different. I look at my 3 boys. They are different personalities, different learning styles, temperaments, love languages. That can feel overwhelming, but actually for me, once I figured that out, it was really freeing, because then I can address each kid where they are, and we're really connecting on their level, on my level. Another big lesson in these teen years, it's not so much about control. It's a whole lot more about influence. And when we have those opportunities to share with them and model for them, those are real treasurable moments. I know that conversations aren't always a lot. I remember really grieving when my 2 older boys started driving because I didn't have that car time with them anymore. And so I'd ask the Lord, give us give me that opportunity to be able to talk with them. And it's fun to see when it happens. Sometimes it's in the kitchen, and sometimes it's late at night in a bedroom. But I just treasure them. I really do, because that's when I get to have those heart-to-heart conversations and share things that I've been thinking, and they're sharing things about what they're going through. And again, it's just one of those really awesome moments in raising these older kids. Modeling is another thing, and I think about marriage. We had a really hard season, and I didn't take a chance a minute ago to show you, but if you could show our family photo. My husband is Larry, and we have 3 boys. Brandon is 23 now, and Jake is 19, and Rafe is 15, and we just have a lot of fun together. And there was this one season, however, where things were really hard. And I'll tell you what, my husband had a lot of wisdom one day, and he looked at me and he said, Shelley, we've got to guard our marriage. If we aren't careful, all this stuff could come between us. And I had to take a step back and think about that, and it was so impactful. It really changed my attitude and my priorities in that season, and I knew he was right. Our marriage had to come first, and if we could keep that strong, we could be unified and support each other, and at the same time, we're modeling for our boys what a good marriage can look like. It's not always sunshine and roses, right? But if we can model to them how to work through that conflict and those hard times, hopefully they'll be able to when they're older. So marriage is big, modeling that for our kids. So is leaning into your tribe. And I mean that's having that circle of friends around you who love you for who you are. In that same hard season, we had one really hard week. And I found myself really brokenhearted in worship one Sunday. And the friends that I had shared with in that week about what we were going through, I don't know, I think it was all God. They came up beside me literally, and they stood on either side of me through worship that Sunday. Of course, it made me cry more, but what it really did is it reminded me that God was there. He was showing himself through that action. So don't ever sell yourself short as a friend on how you can be there for someone. And that tribe, my friends, have really been able to love me well. They've never judged me. They've loved my family well. So prioritize that time with friends. It's good for your soul, I'm telling you. That transitions us to the third point. Are you burned out on religion? And this is that spiritual weariness. Yes, we get tired physically and emotionally, but sometimes we get to that place where our spiritual life just feels empty or non-existent. Maybe our prayers feel like they aren't making a difference, or all the effort that we're putting into this life isn't making a difference. That can be a sign of spiritual exhaustion. Silly question, but I'm sure you've been there. How do you combat that personally?
So when we look back at this scripture in Matthew, Jesus says, come to me. He says, come to me. And I'll tell you, that's just what I have to do. I just have to lean on him during those times and find that grace with what's going on. And I have great friends that will speak truth to me when I'm feeling pretty darn weary. And the hard part, I think, is just letting go and letting God. Our passage also talks about those unforced rhythms of grace. So it's only by God's grace and love that we can find the true rest that we need. And I've been learning that. And in this season of raising all these littles, I've discovered that it's okay for me to simplify my devotional life. I am not John Wesley over here. It's okay that I just pop open my YouVersion app first thing in the morning and do my 5 minutes. God delights. He's just going to delight in any time that I'll give him. And it's so important to keep giving him that time, but I just don't have a lot of time. So, but it's okay. I've learned that I don't need to feel guilty about that if I can't do a big in-depth Bible study. I've also learned that I can find him in all these little moments with my kids. So I might be reading the Bible story that night to my kids, and he'll speak to me through that. Or just looking at my kids. I mean, just looking at all your faces, God created us, and we're amazing miracles, every one of us, just to think about how life comes to be. And so that is just a huge deal to me, just looking at my kids. I can see God there. And then also, I love women's ministry, but I just have jumped into that because there's usually childcare, and I'm not saying it's just because there's childcare, but There's usually childcare, and so I take advantage of that. I know my kids are going to be a good place, and I can go and get filled back up when I need those moments. And so I'm going to be at the luncheon, and I'm going to be at the retreat, and it's also great to surround yourself just with other ladies who are just walking through stuff that you're going through.
Absolutely.
So those are some things I do.
Awesome. Thank you. In the end, we have to trust God. And for me, to build this trust means engaging with Him. And Amber was alluding to that. So prayer is really key. And it doesn't have to be these long, flowery-filled words of prayer. It's just that heart connection. And it can come at any time, in any way. Talk to God for big and little things. Our Matthew passage tells us to look to Jesus to how He did it. Jesus says, watch how I do it. So I took him up on that, and as I read through the Gospels, it never fails. Jesus had to be tapped out. He was human, and he was on the go and busy and being asked of something by everyone all the time. And over again, what did Jesus do to replenish? Is he pulled away from the crowds and he went off by himself. And he would spend time alone. He'd reconnect with his Father, and he would get that soul replenishment that he needed. I mean, if Jesus needed to do that, we need to do that. So we've got to give ourselves permission to do that. So we know the answer is Jesus. He really will help us carry our loads, as that passage tells us. We just have to be willing to give them to him. Ladies, I can say this because I am one, but we tend to have this need to be controlling, maybe just a little. And I think it's because we have this gift of nurturing, and we have to make decisions all the time for our families. And so that's a good part of it. But sometimes we cross the line and we start making the decisions that really God needs to be making. And the truth is, God has equipped us to be the moms of the kids that he has given us. We have to trust that. And at the same time, we can't take over for God. Ultimately, he is in control. And when I think about what that looks like in my life, it's not just this cliche thing, oh, give it to God. It is a truth. I mean, I've had 2 teenage drivers, and I'm about to have a third. I could have 0 sleep at night if I'm worried about them out driving around with their friends. But do I have any control in that situation? I have none. It does me no good to lay in bed and worry and lose more sleep. And so I really have learned how to pray and give that to God. And it's a very real thing in my life. So I hope and pray that for you as well. I'm in a new season. With my older boys getting to where they are, I find myself wanting to worry about their futures. What will it look like? Where will they go? What will they be? And God has been reminding me it's no different. I have no control. I just have to trust them, and I have to trust God. He has the plan, and he has the big picture. Amber, when I think about giving up control, I can't help but be reminded of the season when you and John wanted to start your family, and I was blessed to watch you give up that control to God. I'd love for you to share.
So the way our family came to be initially, I thought that we'd get married and just start having kids and build our family that way, and then I couldn't get pregnant. So I noticed that I had no control very, very quickly. That was out of my control. And so then through the process going on, we decided that we wanted to foster and that we'd be willing to adopt. We'd have our family that way. And you'll know if you ever have to deal with DHS that you have no control at all. And so I had to go through that time, like I got to a place where, because if not, I would have been like the most depressed, like not functioning person, where I just trust that God could see the bigger picture. He was ahead of me, and I just had to move forward, just really believing that. And when I think back on the days when our kids were in foster care, it was the hardest thing in our life, like, because I wanted that control. We know what's best for these kids. Let us, have a say in it. And we just didn't have it. And during that time, God just really showed us that these are not our kids, and that they're his kids. And I mean that for my birth children, because now I've got to birth too, and it's the same for them. They're his kids. I get the awesome responsibility of loving them and raising them, but ultimately they're just his, and I have to understand that. I had to trust that God is just a really good father, and who was going to take care of them, even if the way it turned out wasn't what I wanted or what I had planned.
Yep. And I'll tell you, my story's different. but I really relate. And, as far as that letting go of control, I learned that early on as well. We had a couple of miscarriages before we had Brandon, and it showed me, the great planner that I think that I am, is I can plan all I want, but I don't have much control. I've had 3 boys and all their friends under one roof. Not a lot of control. But God's been working in and through this whole wonderful, awesome, messy parenting journey. So know that we're just skimming the surface here. We could talk about this for a long time. So moms who are in our audience today, we invite you to join us this summer. We think it would be fun just to get together in a few evenings and talk about motherhood, what it's like, what's worked, what hasn't worked, share our stories with one another. And we'll get those scheduled and just have some little mom chats together. We can carry on this conversation together. Our passage today ends with this. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. God is not. He just won't force anything on us. He's not going to force a relationship. He's not going to force us to trust him. All of that comes through relationship. And when we start to know who he is by reading his word and praying with him, just having that dialogue, a trust builds in us, because we do start to trust that he is the good God, that he wants what's good for us. And even when things go bad, he's still going to help us and carry us through that. I have been amazed and utterly dumbfounded at some points at how God's grace has truly met every situation in our lives. Every time that I let go and I let God, he shows up and he does his thing. So really, do whatever it takes to build this relationship with God. And then take the time to build some relationships this way with other people. We are part of this amazing church. Take advantage of it. Find a group of people to do life with. Find one person to do life with. It really makes all the difference. I would be in a pit, most literally, without the people in my life, speaking words of encouragement and truth, and who pray for me all the time.
And my takeaway for you would be, whoever you are and whatever you're going through that makes you tired, because we all get really, really tired, I just would encourage you to keep praying and trusting in God. Even if you feel like those prayers aren't being heard, like they're hitting that ceiling, he goes before you and he sees the bigger picture. This part always makes me sad. When I look back at our season of infertility, I had no idea what my family would look like. I just didn't. But God knew that I wanted to be a mom so bad. And so he gave me that. It just wasn't what I planned, or it wasn't what I thought it was going to look like. But it's good. It's good. So if you're tired or you're weary with whatever you face today, because I know you all have something. I just know it. Whether you're a mom or not, God's grace is sufficient. It is sufficient. He is enough, and his grace is enough for you. And I just want to squeeze your faces and tell you each of that individually, really. He is enough, I promise.
It's time for us to offer our response to the word that God has spoken to us. So we invite you, we have 4 worship stations in either corner. There you can pray with someone, you can take communion. Just take some time to be alone with God wherever you are and talk to him. Ask him, what is it you're asking of me? How can you meet me where I am? And ask for whatever it is that you might be seeking. Maybe it is rest, or maybe there's something else. He will meet you where you are, and we just pray his richest blessings over all of you.